I'm sure you've all received some kind of message from the Zoom program letting you know that we are recording. We will be posting this presentation on our website next week, so you can refer back to it. If you have any questions, you can also drop them in the chat. I have some messages saying that some people might have to leave a little bit early, and that's completely fine. Like I said, we will post the video recording of this on our website next week, so you can watch whatever you might miss tonight. Okay, so we'll go ahead and begin. I'll introduce myself again. My name is Alex Tosca. I'm Deputy Director of Neighborhood Services here at the City of Port St. Lucie. We are very happy to be hosting this webinar tonight. It's an important topic that people have expressed a lot of interest in: safety, neighborhood safety, community safety. And we have a very special guest with us tonight. Before I introduce him, I will introduce Mr. Bolivar Gomez. He is our new Neighborhood Services Project Manager, and he will be working with me on a lot of nice neighborhood improvement, community engagement projects and programs. So we're happy to have him on board and listening in as well. I will leave some information in the chat box as to who you can contact and who you can email if you have any questions after this. Bolivar, you want to say hello?
Yes, thank you, Alex. Thank you for the introduction. Welcome, everyone. I'm very excited to see that we do have a number of individuals that have registered for this session. As Alex mentioned, I am a project manager with the city's Neighborhood Services Department, and I will be directly overseeing our NICE program, which is our Neighborhood Improvement and Community Engagement Program. So thank you.
Thank you. And now, without further ado, our special guest, Mr. Jason Reynolds. Jason is the manager of the Orange County Neighborhood Services Division. So in one of our neighboring counties in the middle of the state from the Orlando area. His division also aims to engage and strengthen neighborhoods. He has a master's degree in urban and regional planning from the University of Florida, is a member of the American Institute of Certified Planners, and is also a designated Florida Crime Prevention through Environmental Design practitioner. That's a mouthful, but we call it Septet for short. The CPTED acronym we refer to as Septet, and it's a really important aspect of neighborhood services, and we are so excited to have Jason here presenting. Thank you. Jason?
Good evening, everybody. It is great. I'm sitting here in Orlando, Florida. I'm speaking to people a few counties away. The pandemic has done a number of terrible things to our society, and many people have lost loved ones, unfortunately. But I would say one of the shining things that's come out of the pandemic is being able to reach people through these web formats, which we weren't using previously. So that's a small glimmer of hope. But thank you, Alex, for having me. Bolivar, it's a pleasure to meet you. I actually grew up not terribly far from there. I lived in West Palm Beach until I went to college, and my family is there, so I'm very familiar with that area. And again, I consider it a privilege to talk to you all this evening. I'm going to share my screen. Says the host disabled me from, can you enable me, Alex, to share the screen?
All right, sorry about that. I just made you a co-host, and now you should be able to share your screen in a few seconds.
Are you all seeing a presentation?
Yes, we do see it. It's I think it's flashing a little, so maybe, did you go into slideshow mode yet?
Okay, hold on, let me try this. You all seeing it there?
Yes.
All right, so this is, again, pleasure to be with you all. So, very simply, we know most people would think about the White House as one of the safest places in America, if not the world. The White House is being guarded by the Secret Service, very best security personnel. Sorry?
Jason, 1 second. It hasn't switched over to full screen mode yet. We still see the regular mode with your first page. There, okay, now we see the White House. But it hasn't
Okay.
hit full screen mode yet.
I'm gonna try, sorry everybody, this is what I'm gonna try a different way to share it.
Okay.
Is it show me as sharing now?
Nope, you stopped sharing.
Okay, all right, I'm gonna try a different way to share this, and I think this should. Please bear with me.
No
while I-
problem, don't worry. The wonders of technology. Maybe while we're waiting for Jason to share his screen, I'll just do a little plug here. Next week on Wednesday evening at 6 p.m., we are starting our first session of the 9-week program called City University. Okay, Jason, perfect. It's full screen and we just saw you flip your slides. So I'll let you start again.
What are you seeing now? Are you seeing the
simple, yeah, the title page.
Okay, all right. So, and now you're seeing the White House?
Yep.
Okay, good. We got there in the end. So the White House, as again was mentioned, is probably one of the safest places in America, if not the world. The Secret Service, which are some of the best and highly trained men and women across America, are protecting. No amount of funding is spared in regards to security. That's where the president lives. That's where his family is. I mean, this is the top notch. If something were to happen, and in regards to security, you would want to be in the White House because of all the infrastructure and cameras and everything there to make it safe. So if you all remember, a few years ago, this is going back several years, someone scaled the White House and was able to get into the White House within 4 minutes. He was able to get over the fence, run across the White House grounds, into the North Portico doors, and which were open and locked, and got into the mansion. And this wasn't a spy or some kind of secret espionage or some kind of super agent from another country. This was just a person who it seemed like was maybe having some kind of mental illness, got into the White House. And the reason that he was able to get into the White House, if you see the second circle, is the trees and foliage obscured the view of this person, and so the secret officers couldn't see him. So back to my original point, you have probably untold millions and countless amounts of security infrastructure in the White House, and well-trained individuals, but it was trees and foliage that allowed this person to get to the White House inside in 4 minutes unscathed. So think about that as I'm laying some foundation. And as Septet, and this is the slide, it has a lot of words on there, but I need to lay out the definition. Septet is the proper design and effective use of the built environment, which may lead to reduction in the fear and incidence of crime, and improvement of the quality of life. And that's a technical definition of Septet. And Septet is not a new concept, using the physical environment to do things. So we go all the way back hundreds of years. We see this castle, And what they've used is the built environment, the physical environment, for security concerns. So you see this moat, and you see there's a bridge, and if the bridge is up, you have a hard time getting to the castle. And likewise, so say you get through the moat, there's a wall. So the idea of using physical features for deterring deviants or any kind of criminal activity or unwanted behavior is obviously not new. And going a little bit further, so this is the 1285, the King Edward I, he actually had in some of their statutes, landowners were responsible for removing areas of concealment along highways. And this was obviously a tool because activities were happening. Remember, people were going on foot and they were on highways, probably carrying things, and people were being robbed. And then also, landowners are held liable for crimes that took place due to their negligence in removing concealment opportunities. So think about that for a second. If you have a piece of property and it's slightly getting overgrown, and something deviant happens on your property, that you are responsible for it. It seems a little bit harsh now, but the idea is that back then people were thinking about how the built environment impacts our safety. So the most basic definition of Septet is it's really social management. Because what you're doing is you're sending behavioral cues to illegitimate and legitimate users of a space. So what you want to do is increase the perception of risk for illegitimate users. So those are people who are not supposed to be in your neighborhood or around your house or in there. You want them to feel like they're going to get caught. You want them to feel like they're not safe, or do a cost benefit analysis or weigh out the costs in their head and thinking it's not worth it. Likewise, you want the legitimate users, such as you and I, whenever we're in places, you want us to feel safe. So that's in our neighborhoods, at the mall, at public spaces and civic buildings. We want to feel like we are legitimate users, we are fine. But, there's always a but. But you have to be careful. So, look at this hotel. Imagine you have been driving on a trip, you've been in the car for 8 hours, you're arriving at the hotel, and you see this. I mean, what does this send to a legitimate user of a space? This is not too dissimilar from what you would say maybe, especially the bottom picture, a prison compound. In their efforts to try and make a place look safe, they've gone too far and making legitimate users like you and I question, why are these security measures necessary? You have locked entrances to get to the hallway, locked entrances to get upstairs. So it's, whether we realize it or not, it's triggering something in our brain to say, what is going on? Why is this here? And then you also don't want to go down this route. I apologize for the strong language, but if you are in a neighborhood and you're putting out, say you're dealing with these issues and you put a sign like this out, what are you sending to people coming through your neighborhood? Your intentions might be good. You might be trying to send a message, but realistically, what the message you're sending is, there are those problems here, and you're highlighting it for people to see. So this, again, goes a little bit on the end of, it's too far in that direction of trying to influence and trying to help people. Trying to influence and trying to send a message. So let's look at the built environment. So this is a brownstone somewhere up north, because I don't think they have very many of these down here in the south. I mean, it just looks like fairly empty. You see some boarded up windows, some trash. It's desolate. You see that car there. Whether you realize it or not, if you are turning a corner and walking down a street, something on the back of your hairs on the back of your neck would likely stand up, because it just looks different. It doesn't look pleasant. And there are no people here. I wanted to emphasize, there are no people here. So it's not a people issue. This is a physical built environment and what it says to us as individuals. So go a little bit more. This is a very similar brownstone. Again, no people. The main difference is how it looks. And what you see here is you see the landscaping, the paint, and it immediately says inviting. It says somewhere that you would want to be. It says somewhere that you feel safe. As a legitimate user of this space, you feel like this is somewhere, I turned the corner, okay, I'll keep walking. So there are a handful of principles of which I'll go over today, which are very commonsensical in regards to thinking about the built environment, your space, your neighborhood, and what we're projecting about it and little things we're doing. So the first of these is natural surveillance. Provides opportunity for legitimate users, us, to observe the space around them. So thinking about that, so what we want to do is see what's going on around our community. So our first example is this example of natural surveillance. And while what you are not able to do is naturally see what's going on in or out of this house. So you are in this neighborhood, and can you all see my mouse moving? A little arrow?
Yes, I see.
Okay, good.
On the top house.
Okay, so this tree, to maintain, this person takes care of their yard, is blocking a window. What this person inside cannot do is they can't see anything. If they're inside the house, they can't see what's happening outside in their yard. They're well-intentioned because they're maintaining it. It's landscaping. Everybody loves landscaping. I love landscaping. Well-intentioned, but what you've done is you removed the opportunity for natural surveillance. Same here. This shrub is blocking the front door, and again, what you've done is remove the opportunity for natural surveillance. So that goes both ways. So if you're inside the house, your shrubs are blocking, you can't see what's happening on the street in your neighborhood. You can't see, for all you know, someone could be walking up to your house you don't know. It goes for the other way. If you are on the street, you can't see you can't see what's happening. You don't even see what's happening in the house. But for all you know, you're all residents of your community, and your community leaders, and you care about your community. Evidenced by being on this webinar this evening, is I gather you're the type of resident, if you see something in your neighborhood that doesn't look right, you're calling someone else or you're calling 911. So if you're walking down the street, for all you know, this window could be broken, or this front door could be kicked in. And that's how natural surveillance, it works against folks who are using the landscaping this way. So again, I love landscaping. I want to stress that. This house has an abundance of landscaping. And you see where everything is cut. And the guiding principle is a 6-foot, 2-foot rule, meaning that shrubs are no taller than 2 feet, and nothing hangs lower than 6 feet. So that's usually 6 foot, about the height of a person. And so that you can't be obscured anywhere in this house. So again, they have landscaping. They have just as much, if not more, than the previous house. But what you can see here, it's below the windows. Front door is visible, so that anybody inside the house can see what's going on outside the house. Likewise, people who are walking through the neighborhood would be able to see what's going on in this. You want to see what's going on in the house, but you want to make sure it's okay. I know that a friend of mine a few years ago, his house got robbed and his front door was kicked in. And one of the reasons it took so long for people to realize is because there was landscaping that was blocking the front door. And the front door was wide open, but you couldn't see it. So those are just examples of the way to make sure that you are keeping the landscaping, but also making sure that it's working for you. It's sending the message of beautification, but it's also not working against you by removing natural surveillance. Next critical theory is the broken windows theory. So that's the idea of maintaining and monitoring areas to prevent vandalism and other small crimes, prevent more serious crimes from happening. So it is the broken windows theory. It's figurative and it's literal. So from the literal standpoint, it's the deviance or other these kind of what's what I'm looking for, kind of blights, so to speak, or rough. They attract certain things and they multiply. So maintaining and monitoring is important. So look here, you see this is a wall. Like someone decides to put graffiti on there. Well, someone puts it. If it goes ignored, you know exactly what will happen next. Someone will add to it. And I understand this is a bit of an exaggeration, but it is not a stretch. Those of you who work in communities, you know that usually when I can speak for up here in Orange County, the second we see graffiti, someone from one of the code inspectors is there immediately to paint over it because it quickly spreads. Because although some people consider this art and some people say it's okay, it is the idea that if you leave something unchecked and if it goes ignored, other people will see that and think that it's okay to do that. How many times have we seen either a vacant property and someone dumps something on there, whether it just be some trash bags or whatever, or lawn clippings, and then very shortly thereafter, there is something else that's been added to that pile. And then shortly after that, there's been something added to that pile. That's kind of the root of the broken windows theory, is it's a snowball effect. So addressing those areas quickly. So the first person dumped it there. And the second person said, oh, okay, well, since no one is caring, I'm going to put this other thing here. And then the third person, and then all of a sudden, you now have a situation where you're calling your code inspector, or you're calling your commissioner, or you're calling public works, because there's a property that has an abundance of trash on there, all because of the idea of one person seeing it's okay to do, and then that creating the problem.
Yes, I will just jump in right there and say that our code officers do drive around with paint in their trucks just in case. It's part of the standard kit of equipment that they use to address those kinds of things. Thanks,
Very
Jason.
good. That is good. All right. So another principle I want to discuss with you all is territorial reinforcement. And that's the idea of adding features to a space to make it feel owned and discourage potential offenders who perceive this control and avoid it. So this kind of goes back to the first couple slides I show with the neighborhood, with the city street that looked kind of desolate. It looked like there was nobody there, looked desolate, and the idea of it feeling unowned and nobody cares for it. And I showed the next slide, and it showed the area where there was landscaping, paint looked nice, and it felt like somebody cared. And what it shows is, it feels like somebody is owning this and someone cares enough. And when you realize someone cares enough, you realize that they take notice of what happens in their community. So back to territorial reinforcement. So this picture is going to come up again in the presentation. So this area is very similar to the broken windows theory, so I'm slightly building on these, is territorial. What this shows is that nobody cares. This did not start out like that. This didn't happen overnight. Someone did not wake up one morning and this was a very gradual process to get to here. And what it shows is nobody cares. I can do what I want. And if I feel like adding to this pile, I will. So the very simple ways to gain territorial reinforcement is beautification. Making an area feel that it is cared for, making them feel that someone is watching it, someone is there, someone took time. If these very nice medians or islands, or I guess little circles, didn't get there by themselves. Likely neighborhood leaders, like yourselves, took the time to plant them or hired someone to plant them. So time and money, definitely time. And when you are in an area, something, like again, something triggers in the back of your head and saying, this area is nice, this area is owned, this area is cared for. So as legitimate users, that's what we're seeing. For the illegitimate users, all of those things that we think that are good, cared for, owned, valued, those are all things that they think are a problem. They don't want to be in a place where it feels owned, cared for, and valued. One of the best ways to achieve territorial reinforcement simply by using neighborhood signs. I know many municipalities have grants for neighborhoods to do signs like these. This is the fastest way to make a community start to feel owned. It's in regards to getting this process going psychologically. I didn't realize how important neighborhood signs were until you start to you work with a neighbor and you get the grant, and the sense of pride that they have now that they have a sign that identifies who they are. And that's strictly psychological, of course, but it goes a long way. Again, it triggers to the legitimate user, I'm entering Normandy Shores, or I'm entering Summerfield. I'm entering someone's community. I'm entering somewhere where they care. They took the time to do this. For the illegitimate user, what it's saying is, I'm entering someone's community. I'm entering a place where they took the time to do this, where this is valued, why they're taking care of these opportunities, taking care of their community. I've touched on some of this before in regards to landscaping and beautifications, but this again builds on the idea that physical improvements made to an area can define territory and create ownership. This is one of the neighborhoods up here applied for a grant, and they did this hardscaping project. And again, it ties into the idea of it defines a territory so it feels owned, and it creates a sense of ownership. So continuing on the landscaping and beautification. So this is a very common site. Someone is apologizing for something they did, and they think that this is their gesture to that person. Guessing it was a man, because these are the kinds of gestures that we tend to make when we make mistakes with our significant others. So this is typically, unfortunately, and I'll say this is what the code inspectors will do. Their priority is not matching the paint. Their priority is covering it up. And in our neighborhood services division, I don't know if that's how it is there, the code inspectors are a part of this division. So I would say this is our standard response. The guy who goes and paints, he will try to match it, and he will try, but his priority is not matching it. If there's graffiti on a wall or any writing, his priority is simply covering it so it will not, people don't add to it, or it doesn't spread, it doesn't become prolific. So the solution, or a solution, which I've found, is to simply plant over it. Put this nice shrub, this will grow, and it's beautification, and it also prevents people from painting over it. So don't take my word for it. I have an example. This is a wall I used to drive by, and in the red circle, it might be difficult to see, there is graffiti. The graffiti is conveniently located throughout this wall. And I imagine this neighborhood dealt with this and said, you know what, we're not doing this anymore. So what they did, if you look to the right of the picture, is they started to just allow the landscaping to grow on the wall. And what you cannot do there is you cannot put graffiti over it. So this very much goes to the prevention is better than cure, and I'll go back, because if the staff person, the code inspector, saw this on a wall, he would paint it. It wouldn't match, but the priority is taking it over. So in that sense, The prevention is putting the deterrence, the landscaping. It serves multiple purposes here. One, it removes the kind of just white wall, and as you can see, it needs to be pressure washed. And two, is it prevents the graffiti. Yes, you will have to maintain it because you don't want this growing out of control, but far easier to maintain this with trimming on a regular basis than trying to deal with graffiti and pressure washing this wall. Continuing on is on the landscaping and beautification is hostile vegetation. So we see here some holly and some Spanish bayonet. This is a very common tool that people use. They plant these on walls or adjacent to walls or under windowsills, because if you've ever had an encounter with one of these two plants, they're not the most pleasant. And again, I'll provide an example for that. So again, this is someone on a painting, and the use of they paint over it, and the tool for beautification. And again, the code inspector is going to come and do this. Don't know if that's how they do it there, but this is what they do. Again, his priority is not matching, his priority is covering. And this is what he'll end up doing. So in regards to beautification, again, prevention is better than cure. So I want to be very clear about art and signage, because we deal with that quite a bit. This is art. This is not a sign. This is not an advertisement. And there is no arbiter for art is art. And if you put this art here, there is a kind of an unwritten rule that you don't put graffiti over art, because you don't put art over someone else's art. And again, this serves multiple purposes. This goes to the deterrence. Prevention is better than cure in regards to this being here and someone not putting graffiti over it. And you can use it as a way to spread a good message through your community. As you can see, it's grow community. You engage residents from your neighborhood, you engage students, and they have a sense of ownership in it and a sense of pride in the project and the neighborhood. So continuing on, these projects we see, these are boxes. Public Works loves them. What happens here, unfortunately, is people put posters on there. They put the posters that say the parties, and they advertise events, and you pull them off. But when you pull them off, what you're left with is the idea is the residue of the glue, no matter how hard you try. And again, remember my thought about prevention is better than cure and beautification. What we've seen success is wrapping these boxes in a design. And you can work with a vendor to do this. And again, once this pattern is on there, people are less likely to deface them because of the nature of the art. And also what we do is we treat the box with some kind of like an anti-stick.
Yeah.
The company, BioTrace, the name of the company.
It's anti-graffiti, right?
Well, it's not anti. It's like a non-stick. Imagine like the inside of like an aluminum pan. So you can put the poster on there, but it won't stick. Mm-hmm. Or if you put the graffiti on there, you can simply wipe it off. So again, the prevention is better than cure. You can either just coat the very bland gray box, or you can put some beautification on the box, coat it. Again, you engage maybe someone from your community to design some art. And again, it goes into this now feels owned. You see it, someone took the time to put it on there. You have to be very careful you're not getting into signage. But I've seen these being used as a way to reflect the community. Sometimes they don't really like words, but a way to reflect the community and show some pride in the community. So continuing to believe it or not, one of the most controversial topics is lighting. Of course, illuminating human activity can increase the perception of public safety. And I would say can increase because obviously nothing is fail-safe. So I want you to realize that there is a light on this street that is, to me, ineffective. It's it's illuminating some human activity, but if you look, there are people in that background, just ahead of the light, who are now essentially, they've walked from an area illuminated and into dark. So I would consider this an ineffective use of light. So in regards to lighting, the traditional, the HPS, the high pressure sodium, which is what most utility companies and public works departments and providers were installing. I believe they've moved away from this now, and you start to see it not as common, if very infrequently, and those are the HPS, high pressure sodium. The LED lights do a truly different and a more effective way of illuminating an area. If you're going to light up an area, the least that can be done is making sure it's lit effectively. So here is an example of lighting, and this is it's the same street before and after. So if you look at the one with the left, which is the high pressure sodium, it's very difficult to distinguish colors here. Everything has that very orange tint, that orange hue, and if you are in an event, you're trying to identify a color, maybe someone's shirt or a color of a car. Again, the lighting is there, it's illuminated, but not effectively. So on the right, when you look at the LED, it's a very clean and crisp and effective way of illuminating. You can see the yellow in the stripe. You can see the white very clearly, where it would be a turn only. If there was a car in the picture, it'd be very easy to tell the color of the car. If someone was walking down the street, you'd want to say the color of their clothes. So again, and these are, obviously you can buy LED lights anywhere. You can put them outside your home or inside your home. And also you can, when you're meeting with your neighborhood leaders and you're thinking about lights going into your community, I highly, highly recommend pursuing the LED light options. Again, now there's another one. This is what I would call ineffective overabundance of lighting. So this is lit, lighting is all over the place, and something that most people seem to think is the more light, the better, or the more light, the better. And I don't think that's the case. So here is an example of lighting. The one on the left is non-cutoff. More lighting, is it effective? Well, it's illuminating the area, but do you need that much light? No. And you start to go to semi-cutoff and cutoff and full cutoff. Realistically, if you are trying to, say this is outside your home or a street, the threat, so to speak, or the area you need illuminated is not the sky. You're not worried about the bats or the birds, and no one is, if anybody is going to do you any harm through deviance, they're not coming from you from the sky. They're coming from you from the ground. So what is the need to light anything above the top of the light fixture? There really isn't. It's essentially light pollution, and there's also initiative, Dark Skies initiative, where we're trying to limit or reduce the amount of light going into the sky. And this is just a way that I think, in terms of being effective, again, effective lighting, do we need the lighting on the top half of these lights? And the answer is no. What you need is the light on the bottom half. So and it's directing the lighting to the right place. The second controversial area, believe it or not, is fencing. And fencing delineates property and can add security to offer privacy. Well, you'd be surprised how people feel about fencing. So this fence, this is the very common white vinyl fence that many people have. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but some of the issues with this fence are, one, if someone is going to rob your home or do something, All they have to do is get over or defeat the fence or get in this fence, and they can essentially work or operate obscured, because this fence has basically created a screen for the entire community. Someone could be in and out of that back door and they have no idea. And I understand there's a desire for privacy, which is why I'm not, like, this is not something I'm telling someone you need to do. But realize that once you've put up this fence, you're now in a position that you've now screened your back porch, or even if it's in the front, you've screened it from the community, removing some of that natural surveillance, which I spoke about earlier. So the recommended fence, they call it a Septet fence, regular fence, is something that defines your territory, which is important, without creating that barrier or the natural surveillance. And you know, of anybody who has a white fence, you know how difficult it is to keep that clean. So this is what they call them, a Septet fence. It is what most people who are in the field and practitioners, what they will recommend. Because realistically, if you have one of the white vinyl fences, if someone is determined, they're going to get through that fence. So that part of it is, in regards to acting about, it's a very low barrier for entry. You get through the fence. And once they're through there, if someone were to go into this backyard, people will see that someone is in this backyard or in that back door, and they are not legitimately supposed to be there. So we all know Mr. Rogers. He recently passed away. He actually went to school up here at Rollins College in Orlando, Florida, in Winter Park, which is near Orlando. And this is the neighbor we're trying to be. Won't you be my neighbor? We're all good neighbors. We're all here. And and the question is, what type of a neighbor are you? Are you a Mr. Rogers neighbor? Well, we know the way things are right now. Everyone has their cell phone and it's distracted and they're minding their own business. And this lady is presumably minding her own business, walking her child. And what type of a neighbor is she? Is she paying attention? Is she seeing what's happening in her community? And I would venture a guess the answer is probably not. She's minding her own business, sending a text message, pushing her child. And what type of a neighbor are you? And what I stress is the greeting culture. Is, you are my neighbor, I'm going to get to know you. We don't have to be friends. We don't have to invite each other to the barbecue, but I'm getting to know you. And I think that's it's not as important as the idea of like the physical environment, but anytime you're talking about neighbors, and these are the people you live next to, these are the people who, if you are gone somewhere and something's awry at your house, they're the ones who are going to see it and make comments and provide input. So it's critical for that. And what I'd like to say is the greeting culture is, we've all been there. Someone is in our neighborhood. We don't know them. And that initial interaction is what's going to essentially set the tone for that future relationship. So do you go up to them and say, what are you doing here? Or how can I help you? Well, no, I think that type of reaction, that type of talk or interaction is aggressive and can trigger certain responses. When realistically, couldn't it be just as simple as saying, hi, how are you doing? Okay. Or the weather is very nice, and start the conversation that way to ease into the conversation. So if you are a legitimate user of a space and someone comes up to you and greets you, so you're walking through your neighborhood, you're new in your neighborhood, hey, how are you doing? You might not know them, are you new to this neighborhood? Or start talking about the weather or sports. But that's a very welcoming feeling, and that's recommended. If you are an illegitimate user of a space and someone comes up to you, of course, if you think the person is dangerous, don't approach, but just go up to them. You're not trying to put them on edge, because realistically, law enforcement should be handling them if it's a situation that's dangerous. But it's someone, and you perceive, you say, hey, how you doing? I'm doing okay, whatever. If this person is meant to be an illegitimate user of a space and they're not wanting to be there, they will leave on their own accord because they don't want to be engaged. And there's no reason in all of this to say, there's no reason to aggressively speak to people or approach people, because I think that does more damage than good. But realistically, I think approaching people in a pleasant way, if you're not supposed to be there, you don't want to be spoken to, and you'll leave. And if you are supposed to be there, you want to be approached in a pleasant way. So I've done a lot of talking, and I know that and naturally you say, who is this guy? What is he talking about? Does any of this stuff make sense? Well, no good presentation is complete without a case study. So what I have here is a case study that pulls into a lot of the principles we've discussed. So this this study comes from this neighborhood in Oakland, California, called Clinton, Northern California. They had a median, just like you see in any median across America. I want you to remember that red curb, because it's a point of interest. It's manicured. Someone's taking care of it. And what happened is some people started to dump there and leave things. So they went this route, which is you call your elected official, you call your department, say put a sign there, and violator will be prosecuted to the full extent of the law, and it's under 24-hour surveillance. Well, as someone who works for the government, I can tell you, I don't know about the 24-hour surveillance part, and good luck trying to catch someone who's dumping, prosecute them to the full extent of the law. It's aspirational at best. So the sign is there, but people kept dumping. And you remember this picture. This is the red curb. And this didn't happen overnight. The guy who lived there saw these issues, and he just couldn't believe, like, what's going on? This a little bit of trash, then it became a lot of trash, then it became dumping. So over the course of time, this is going back in 2009, believe it or not, trash dumping and graffiti, that led to prostitutes, mugging, aggravated assault, and drug deals. And I mean, you think about it, and it's like, no, that couldn't be. It's like, no, this is, I can, if you want, I can email you the newspaper article where this story was told, and he's basically saying, I just watched this little area deteriorate before my eyes, just from simply just some trash and dumping. So what this neighbor did, he's much like you all, dedicated leader. He's here, like you all. You're here watching this, and he's like, I have to do something about it. So what he did is he put a Buddha in the median. He cleaned it and then put a Buddha in the median. This was at his wit's end. I think he bought it at a local store, I think it was the Ace Hardware maybe. And he said, all right. He didn't want to put any of the other religious leaders or any kind of statues, because they're kind of polarizing. His thought was, it's Buddha. No matter what you feel, Buddha, you either don't care, it's not polarizing, or just kind of like a lukewarm, or it really doesn't matter to me. Buddha, there. And very shortly thereafter, little presents started showing up next to the Buddha. So if you know, in Northern California, there is a very strong Asian community. He couldn't figure out, like, what was going on here. These things were starting to show up and not trash. So he's kind of monitoring, and it's okay. And then shortly after that, It's a little shrine, very well taken care of shrine. And as you can see, what's replaced the trash is people. And these are people bringing presents and offerings to the Buddha. And then very shortly after that, people started coming and praying to the Buddha and having services. And in his mind, he's thinking, not sure what's going on here. These people are here. Okay. And it grew. And it became a full-fledged prayer area. And it was eventually permitted, and the issues were addressed and permitted, so it got through, so it wasn't so it was legitimized. But I want you to realize what you're seeing here now, and go back to my original definition of Septet. Behavioral cues to illegitimate users of a space, increase the perception of risk for illegitimate users, and make legitimate users feel safe. So what happened is legitimate users in a sense of ownership and the risk to the illegitimate users. And in that area, crime reduced by 82% during that span of time. And it was simply because if you're in the illegitimate users of that area were pushed out simply by people who were supposed to be there. And that's kind of Septet breaking it down like to its granular senses, what I said in these three sides. With the behavioral cues, increased risk of increased risk for illegitimate users, and make legitimate users feel safe. Those are basically the tenets of this. And that's what I want you all to take away is as you're through your communities, what are the behavioral cues being sent? How is it being perceived by you? You are legitimate users of an area. And what is being sent to the illegitimate users? So here are some resources. Florida Crime Prevention Training Institute, highly recommend them. The National Crime Prevention Training Institute. Most local law enforcement are trained in Septet. They usually, when I did my classes, it's usually 95% law enforcement personnel. And you'd be surprised if you call, especially in a fairly big town or a big area like you are, they've been trained. And some of them will do assessments of your property in your neighborhood and make recommendations for what can be done and what could be helpful to a property. So that concludes my presentation. See that there are a number of questions in the chat. Alex,
Thank you, Jason. Fantastic, great tips. And it's nice to hear it from, different perspectives and different people who are doing, similar jobs in neighboring communities. We actually were just chit-chatting about different things in the chat. So no specific questions, but I would like to say that the city has started working on small beautification projects like some of those that Jason mentioned, including the wraps on utility boxes. We've wrapped all city-owned utility boxes. So we're always looking for more suggestions and cooperation and collaboration with residents on any other small neighborhood improvement projects. So contact the NICE office. And also thanks for that tip about police officers. Yes, in fact, our police department has a number of people who are Septet certified. Our assistant director that runs the code compliance division is also Septet certified. And we have specialists at the police department that will help residents meet and create neighborhood watch groups as well. So if you're interested in any of that, we'd love to get those going or help you get them going. Thank you so much, Jason. I really appreciate it. I saw Jason present at a neighborhood conference in Birmingham, Alabama, actually, a while back. And it was just such a clear and straightforward and simple presentation. I really felt that it would be great to offer that to our community as well. So thank you so much for sharing your time with us and sharing your presentation with us, Jason.
Certainly, and I am happy. Thank you for listening to me, and you're welcome, and it's a pleasure. This is a topic that I sought out, and I like this because I saw other presentations, and I just thought they were confusing. And I wanted to break it down in a way that is easily digestible, that residents of the community can just pick it up without getting technical and using real life examples that we can all appreciate. So again, thank you, Alex, for having me. Thank you, Bolivar. It was a pleasure. I know it's a Thursday evening, and you all could be doing many things, but you're dedicated to your community, and you are trying to gain knowledge to share with the other residents. So again, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jason. Have a good night. I'm going to stay on the line a couple more minutes just in case anybody wants to ask me any questions. But we'll get this presentation posted online and reach out to us anytime for any information. Oh, yes. Good night, Jason. Thank you. One more thing before we go, we never finished the plug from the beginning. Bolivar, would you like to unmute yourself and tell everybody about City University next week?
Yeah, definitely. So I went ahead and just included a link in the chat box. So if you have a moment, check it out. We are starting City University next Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. It is going to be through Zoom for 9 weeks that we're going to meet every Wednesday at 5:30 through Zoom. Take a look to see if you are interested. It really gives you a good perception of the different departments within the city. And then we're also going to have a couple guest speakers with different organizations that are also within the city as well. So definitely check it out. There is also going to be a graduation ceremony during the 9th week, which is going to be on October 27th. So this is going to be, I believe, the 5th year of the program. We've had a number of residents that have signed up for it since the beginning, and it's really gotten a lot of great traction. And so definitely check it out, and we hope to see you all registered, and hopefully we'll see you next Wednesday.
Great. Thank you, everyone. And if there are no more questions, I'll let you all log off and have a good night, good rest of the evening, and have a good weekend.
Thank you all. Thanks, Alex.
Thanks.